Well, good morning, everybody. It's 11:30. We'll go ahead and get started with the pre-commission agenda. For the president's report, I'll share that Commissioner Pickering will be here for the regular agenda. Right now, she's at the ribbon cutting for the Goddard Linear Park, and I'll just share a couple of comments on her behalf. That this project is a great example of collaboration between the West Bench Neighborhood Association, the City Parks and Recreation Department, and ACHD. This linear park and pathway along the canal will fill a long-standing sidewalk gap on canal property and connecting a very challenging area of the West Bench. It's been a long time coming and will provide a safe and beautiful pathway for students and community members to get to Capitol High School, businesses, and churches. And I know she's been an advocate for that project, so she wanted to be at the ribbon cutting. That's all I have from commissioners. Are there any general housekeeping items or discussion of the agenda? No? All right, seeing none, I will turn it over to Director Head for the director's report.
Good morning, Madam President, Commission. We are excited for another week and another number of items that we can share with you of what the team's been working on and what we've been able to complete. As we continue to always work together to build together safe and more with our community, with our partners, and there's a lot of great things that have been able to be accomplished. This last week, we hosted our communications connection at the new Traffic Operations Center. For those who may not be aware, communications connections are a series of events that is held between all the different public agencies and their communication staff to learn about what each agency is doing, but also to talk about and coordinate on different types of activities and how we can get information out there. We had around 30 people show up. We were able to share with them about ACHD Connect, educate on that. Some of the agencies were very excited and interested in how they could implement something similar, and also how they could then provide comments to ACHD as well. And then we were able to share the Traffic Operations Center with lots of excitement about what that means and how that can be utilized. So it was a very positive event. There's some good things coming out of it. One of the things that was discussed that is in the works is kind of a welcome packet when people move into a new house. The post office does something like this, but really from the local governments being able to provide good information about who's in charge of what, who to contact, other things like that. This isn't something that's typically done, so it's a shared idea that's being developed, and there's a lot of excitement that seems to be coming from that. Lots of events going on right now. One of the events I just mentioned is the BTT Memorial Day Clásico soccer tournament. Very exciting. This particular event, though, why I'd like to highlight it is we worked with our construction schedule for a project, recognizing the special event and its impact and the number of people who would be coming to it. And we worked on shifting our project around in order to accommodate that event. And that's pretty typical practice. When we have special events, we look at what can we do to help support those while at the same time getting the good work done that our team is set up to do. We had, as far as Build Safe, wanted to talk a little bit about the State and Pierce Park project and some of the things that we implemented here that have been very successful. We learned from some of our other projects the value of being proactive in terms of calming traffic in and around a major construction project. And so prior to the project's construction, we implemented, and as part of the contract, implemented some speed bumps in the adjacent roads. Well, we continued to hear from the neighborhood that there may be some other areas where that's needed, and so we were able to implement some additional speed bumps in and around that area. One of the things that Katie was able to go on camera and share a little bit about this and the status of this project. It's a really big project. It's going to be going on for quite some time, and so we wanted to be good about addressing that. But we're also going to watch and see how those temporary bumps hold up throughout the construction, And ultimately, they're on roads that we'd be looking at calming anyway from a traffic perspective. And so we're going to see how we can leave those and let those be an asset in the neighborhood moving forward. So lots of good things happening there, but it's definitely, as you watch the news report, as well as what we're hearing from the public, is it's been well received, the efforts that have been made there to anticipate the impacts of the construction.
Have you ever wondered how ACHD knows when a road's
Video.
compacted? Well, in today's episode of What Is It Wednesday, we're going to be talking about that. I am Matthew with ACHD. I'm a project inspector, and today we're going to talk about one of the methods with our nuclear densometer. This device actually tests compaction of soils, asphalt, concrete. It has a little tiny bit of cesium-137 in there, and will actually shoot out a little bit of gamma radiation. And the radiation coming back to the sensor on this thing will actually tell us how compacted material actually is. So our gauge here has what we call our source rod. This little handle will actually advance down all the way up to 12 inches. At the tip of the source rod, that's where our cesium-137 is. It's a very small amount, but with our gauge, we can electrify that cesium-137. It'll actually shoot out that gamma radiation, and there's a sensor on the other side of the gauge that will pick it up and tell us how compacted the surface is. When we're building a road, we don't just put a bunch of gravels out, pave on top of it, and then have you guys drive on it. We actually have to build it in layers like a cake. And so we put a little bit of gravel down, we test it with our densometer here, make sure it's compacted enough for the next layer, and we'll do that so on and so forth until we get to the asphalt layer. Then we'll take our densometer out, test the asphalt, what's below the asphalt, make sure it's compacted enough and safe enough for the public use. We'll test sidewalks. When a contractor comes out or somebody comes out and digs a trench to put sewer in, we'll test the trench as well. Everything that's done in our right-of-way. Thanks to this gauge and other testing methods, ACHD is always making sure that the roads are compacted and safe. And that's it for your What Is It Wednesday.
Mission, and I wanted to share this with you because it's a great example of the efforts that are being made by our communications team, as well as all of our team members, to really educate the public about what is it that we actually do and how do we make sure the investments that are made last and are useful for the public for a very long time. Just grateful for Matt and his good way of explaining that. Just another example of how we can use this. We're looking at how can we do a What Is It Wednesday about vehicle registration fees as we come up on a what will be a campaign, but how do we educate the public on what are those used for and how are we investing the dollars that they give us and making it useful long-term. So I think that that's a great example of the good work our communications team is doing to really get the message out there to the public. Wanted to share with you that this wonderful project out in Star on Floating Feather is coming to a close. This has been a project many years in the making. I remember watching it as part of the integrated 5-year work plan. One of the things that, and why this is a good example here, is the neighborhoods that built in and around that contributed to a road trust. Knowing that this bridge was going to need to be replaced, it also gave us the opportunity to fill in a sidewalk connection. So as that secondary or collateral project, we were able to also fill in a good sidewalk gap, have a good pathway there that will go on this road. And so that project was paved just this week, and so we're excited for that to be wrapping up. We also are excited to announce the end of our 8th Street Extension Autoseal project. This has been a project that has been a concern for the public for quite some time in terms of the dust that was coming up on that road, the amount of maintenance that we were required to continually do there. And we're excited that the type of work that we were able to do. The Autoseal is really just, it's a thicker seal. It uses larger rocks there, makes it, and in lieu of what we typically do with a chip seal, where we put down the oil, put down the rock, and then do it like a seal on top of it, we're able to leave it looking more natural and in that environment, as that road has been dirt for quite some time, but it will hold together a lot better long term. But this was a good start for our chip seal program, as we were able to try and get the crews mobilized and testing this out and able to complete this important project at the same time. It is National Public Works Week, and we join with our fellow partners at the cities and other utilities to talk about and to support and thank our teams for the work that they do to ensure that everyone's able to move around safely, that we have the needed utilities. We have, it's not been that long since we didn't always have these kinds of things, and we take that for granted, where power comes to our house and where water flows from our sinks and all of the other fun things that come through public works. And so we just want to take a moment and just express gratitude to our team members who work so hard at this, as well as our partners, who, making sure that all the necessary things that make our community great are available. So just a few things coming up in connection with Public Works Week. We will be participating out at an expo at City of Meridian, where there'll be a touch of truck events and other things to share with the community. Next week, we will not have a commission meeting. There were no agenda items to be had, so we thought that it would be great to take that time off. There's a few other events going on there. Star will be having a town hall that evening. The Meridian State of the City is scheduled for 3:29 p.m. on the 4th. Please let us know if you'd like to be registered for any of those types of events. If as well as we have an upcoming May in Motion awards luncheon scheduled for the 26th. So we're working closely on getting that event, and we're excited to celebrate with our commuter ride team and the community on all the good work that's been done through May in Motion. And with that, Commission, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, any questions? All right, thanks for another great report, Director.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will be at ease until noon. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's now 12 o'clock. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thanks for joining us in person and online, and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first order of business is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. I do not believe we have any requests to move anything on the consent agenda. So is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. I've got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That moves us to the regular agenda. We've got one item, Talladega Vacation, public hearing and adoption of resolution number 2443. This is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open that and welcome Carrie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Carrie Niesel, Real Estate Management Specialist for ACHD. This is a public hearing and decision briefing presentation on the proposed right-of-way vacation for Talega subdivision. Okay, so ACHD has received an application from Dirk Pardo to develop a mixed commercial, multifamily residential and single-family development in Eagle, Idaho. The design requires the applicant to vacate approximately 2.13 acres of open public right-of-way. And the vacation and abandonment is a requirement from Development Services in order to approve the applicant's development plans for the new subdivision. Okay, this map shows the general vicinity of the proposed vacation. Again, it's located in Eagle, Idaho. It is northeast of Highway 16 and Highway 44 State Street intersection. The segments are currently within the R.L. Hahn subdivision that was originally transferred to ACHD by the Idaho Transportation Department back in 2018. So here's the site up close. Again, the segments are lying northeast of Highway 16 and State Street intersection. The new development will require adjusting segment A, that's Hamlin Avenue shown in yellow on your screen, and C, Schultz Street in green for future growth, and then abandoning segments B, which is Truman Place there in blue, and segment D, Schultz Court in orange. Okay, so this is a representation of the development that the applicant is proposing. The city of Eagle has identified the need for more affordable housing options in order to allow their citizens and the ability to both work and live in the city, and this development project helps to meet that demand. And the applicant's also going to provide access to the adjacent landlocked parcel. You can see up there in the top northwest corner, highlighted in red. Originally, that access for that parcel was off of Highway 16, but the Idaho Transportation Department bought that out, landlocking that parcel once upon a time. So, then, here you can see an overlay of the vacated segments just to kind of give you a visual of the proposed changes. And this is a picture of the site today showing segment B, Schultz Court, they're in orange, and D, Truman Place, they're kind of highlighted in blue, where they're going to be vacated to make way for that development. Okay. So the appraised value for each of the 4 right-of-way segments is shown here. We got a total square footage of 92,712 with a value of $4.02 per square foot for a total of $572,702. And at this time, the applicants have paid the $2,500 application fee, completed all the commission and staff requirements for vacating the right-of-way segments. But it is the commission that determines if it is in the public's interest to vacate or not. So here's the alternatives that the commission can take at this time. You can adopt and sign resolution number 2443, authorizing the proposed vacation, or you can deny the vacation request and do not adopt resolution 2443. And with that, this concludes the presentation, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Carrie. Are there any questions for Carrie?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
Carrie, just to clarify, it appears from all the information that these right-of-way segments aren't currently paved. And so the property owner will be tearing those all up and so on, I presume, or for the most part. Is that correct? Are they all currently paved?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioners, they are all currently paved.
Okay, all right. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks, Carrie. If the applicant is here, invite you up to go ahead and speak on this.
My name is Trenton Smith. I'm with Focus Engineering and Surveying, and I just want to say thank you all for reviewing this application. We appreciate your time and the time of staff to put this application together for us. We're excited about this project that is associated with this application. We think it'll provide a beautiful place for people to live, and it also provides more connectivity for the community. Access to Amazon comes with this project, plus extending Hamlin to the north to connect to residents and future projects there, and providing the access to the Grange house, which I know that the current property owner has worked with the Grange owner extensively to make that happen. And so we're excited about this, we ask for your approval, and we'll get started on this. And I stand for any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, thanks, Trent.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the public in person or online who wish to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam President,
Commissioner Pickering.
I'll move to approve the Talega vacation public hearing and adoption of resolution 2443 as presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next up is discussion items. We've got public communications. Welcome anybody in person or online who wish to address the commission. Okay, seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. We will move into the post-commission agenda. We have one work session. The impact fee capital improvement plan update for roadway and intersection analysis review. Welcome. Edinson.
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Edinson Bautista, ACHD Senior Transportation Planner and co-manager for the Impact Fee and Capital Improvement Plan update. Presenting today, we have Megan Anderson, Impact Fee Administrator and co-manager for this update. And as well as our consultant for this project, Kilson Associates, with us here, Mark Heisinger. In today's work session, staff and the consultant are back again in front of the Commission to report back on the plan's update and present the findings of the analysis conducted for roadway and intersection analysis. With that, I will give the time to Mark, who's going to lead us in today's presentation.
Hi, Commission. My name is Mark Heisinger, and I'm back in front of you today representing Kittleson and Associates. I've been working through this process for a while now with my colleague Sonia. She couldn't make it today, so for better or for worse, you're stuck with me for this presentation. And this time, we'll really be focusing on presenting our initial project list as well as that project identification process. So I'd like to start off by providing an overview of the 2025 CIP projects process, where we are now and where we're heading. So as a reminder, the last couple presentations that we've given to the Commission and the CICAC have focused on the best practices review. This included a deep dive into 4 different focus areas related to CIP development, service areas, range of projects, collector roadways, and traffic analysis period. We will be revisiting some of these topics later this summer, as some of the feedback that we got from the commission as well as the advisory committee was that it was difficult to provide direction without having a better idea of the actual project list. So since then, we have been working with ACHD staff to identify which projects may be eligible for inclusion in the CIP and funding via impact fees. Today's presentation will focus on that process and the resulting draft project list. For next steps, we will continue to screen and refine the project list, develop cost estimates, assess impact fee eligibility for projects, and use that information to develop an updated traffic impact fee schedule. I'd also like to note that a similar presentation was given recently to the advisory committee, and the feedback that we obtained from that group was incorporated into that process and into this presentation. So with that, I'll jump into the presentation and first just give an overview about what I'll be talking about today. So I'll give an overview of the project identification process, some of the underlying assumptions in the Compass travel demand model, the resulting roadway and intersection projects that may be considered for inclusion in the updated CIP, a look at how our findings compared to the previous CIP, and then finally talk a little bit about next steps. And then from there, we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions. So this slide shows at a very high level the analysis process for project identification. And really the first part of this process is related to Compass's travel demand model, which has 2 main components, the roadway network and the demographics. We'll be going into demographics in greater detail in the next couple slides, since that is really a foundational element of this process. The second part of this process was an analysis of roadway widening or capacity needs on arterials within ACHD's jurisdiction. This involved post-processing of model traffic projections, comparison to ACHD's planning thresholds, and then finally using that information to identify projects in 5-year increments from 2025 out to 2045. And then the third part of this process was an evaluation of intersection capacity needs at arterial to arterial intersections within ACHD's jurisdiction. This included a traffic operations evaluation under both year 2025 and year 2045 conditions, an assessment of future control type, and then the actual project identification. So now I'll talk a little bit about some of the demographic data that went into this process. So the primary underlying assumption that really drives this analysis is the regionally adopted future demographics that are built into this model. So these demographics are developed by Compass based on close collaboration and input from land use agencies, approved and anticipated development, and historical growth trends. And these are adopted regionally as part of Community in Motion 2050. These are then reconciled annually. So Compass goes through this annual reconciliation process, essentially to account for ongoing development. Some of the larger developments that were included in the demographic set for the CIP are highlighted on this slide. And I also want to note that while Compass's current forecasts go all the way out to year 2050, they also provide year 2045 forecasts that were used in this process, as the Idaho Impact Fee Act specifies that CIPs may not have a horizon year more than 20 years into the future. So at a high level, the assumed growth within Ada County is about 31% for both households and jobs in the next 20 years. And that equates to an annual growth percentage of about 1.6% per year. The map on your left on the screen shows the growth in households, and the map on the right shows the growth in jobs per individual zone, with the darker purple indicating higher levels of growth. And I know this is hard to see, and I believe these figures were also included in the packet that was provided to you. I won't spend too much time here, but just wanted to provide just a quick snapshot of the growth forecasts used in this project identification process. So this information was presented to the CICAC, and they accepted the use of this demographic data for the 2025 CIP update, and it was subsequently used for this analysis. I also want to note that the use of Compass's regionally adopted demographics is consistent with the approach taken in previous ACHD CIP updates. So with that, we'll jump into our discussion on projects. So before we got into the actual project list, we wanted to provide just a couple more notes on the actual process that was used to identify these projects. So we have a 20-year horizon. So the process really identified growth-related capacity needs on both roadways and arterials from 2025 to 2045. We started this process by identifying existing deficiencies or roadways that already exceed ACHD's planning thresholds under year 2025 conditions. And as per Idaho code, these projects are not eligible for traffic impact fee funding. We then evaluated what capacity projects would be needed to maintain the current levels of service and meet ACHD's planning thresholds with the addition of development over the next 20 years. And then throughout this process, we referred to ACHD's master street map, which identifies the planned or maximum allowable widening for each ACHD arterial. So without any further ado, we'll get to the actual projects. So this slide shows the roadway projects that were identified as part of this analysis process. As shown on this map, we have identified 147 total roadway projects, and these projects include widening of existing arterials to 3, 5, or 7 lanes, or new arterial roadway alignments. Compared to the previous CIP, this is an increase of 13 projects and results in an 11% increase in total lane miles. And we have a comparison slide coming up that shows specifically what has changed between the currently adopted CIP and this updated analysis. One important note I'd like to make at this point is that the roadway projects shown here and the intersection projects shown on the next slide really show the full list of capacity improvements that are needed to meet ACHD's planning thresholds as growth occurs over the next 20 years. And with the exception of existing deficiencies, these maps represent the list of potential projects that could be included in the CIP as impact fee eligible. This is not the final project list, and it will be further screened, and projects will be modified as we move forward based on input from the CICAC Commission and through working with ACHD staff.
1 second, Mark. Commissioner Pickering.
Yes, thank you. Mark, thank you for that. Could you back up just a little bit and give us a little bit more of a history around how you came up with this proposal and just confirming that this is Kittleson's proposal, or have you been working with staff? Because I think this is a lot. This map is obviously helpful. I've got oodles of questions before it even goes to the CICAC, but I'm just curious, can you kind of walk us back a little bit about how you guys got to this map?
Sure, yeah, President Gold, Commissioner Pickering. So the first step is the demographics, the regionally adopted demographics encompasses model.
Right.
And the growth that we see from now through year 2045. And then that demographics is translated within the model to travel demand on ACHD's roadway network. We didn't use that demand, those straight numbers. We compared those to existing traffic volumes to essentially calibrate those projections as we looked at demand on these roadways in 5-year increments from 2025 to year 2045. And each time in those 5-year increments, we would compare that adjusted demand to ACHD's planning thresholds, and that would indicate if that planning threshold is met or not. And if it wasn't, then widening was warranted. And maybe the other note is that the master street map kind of set those guidelines of maximum allowable lanes. So if the master street map indicated that 3 lanes was kind of the maximum planned lanes, even if we showed that demand going over that threshold, it still would remain at 3 lanes.
Follow up. So thank you for that, kind of laying that out a little bit more specifically. You know, I think I appreciate Compass's data and projecting and analyzing like where that growth is happening. But have you all evaluated where, 20 years ago we expected growth to happen and we widened and it didn't actually come to fruition? Like how are we learning from like previous projections and weaving those lessons into this projection?
Yeah, President Gold, Commissioner Pickering, it's a good question. And I guess maybe I'll start by saying that the Compass model and their demographic projections, in my mind, they improve every year. They put a lot of work into developing those future forecasts. And they're constantly refining this model to improve those projections. In terms of kind of how that relates to widening and projects, those are conversations that we're actively having with ACHD staff as we refine this project list.
I mean, I follow up. I appreciate that, but I think that there is a communication gap though. I mean, coming from my perspective, because we see it when we are engaged with our districts, right? Where we see projects that were overbuilt or mismatched with how the community has grown over time or changed over time. And I am very hesitant to believe that those stories and observations are being, obviously I think our staff are pretty privy to those details because we work with those communities one-on-one, but Compass doesn't have those connections that our staff do. So I appreciate that they're working on that formula and that comparison every year, but I don't think that we're actually getting the full scale understanding of how we can continuously improve it because we are the ones that are having those conversations day in and day out.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, I'll do my best to add some context and some of the process behind this. What you're seeing, as Mark mentioned, is just essentially the output of the model and the results of the technical analysis with some initial staff input. There will be further refinement. This does fit into a larger picture, though, as you clearly pointed out, of where do we want to go as a community when it comes to the overall roadway network. That is largely captured in our master street map, which is a key variable in this discussion. I will give you some examples of where projects that were in previous CIPs no longer exist or never were built. Maple Grove north of Fairview, I believe is in your district, for many, many years showed as a 5-lane widening and an expansion project. Over various different CIPs, that we started to realize through the analysis and through community feedback that section, it's a mile, it's a section line road, really wasn't desirable to widen. And then the commission through the master street map process essentially said, you know what, we don't want to widen that section. And they put it on the constrained corridors list, and it no longer shows up in our CIP as a widening project. If we allowed the technical analysis just to run raw, it would probably trigger a 5-lane need, but it doesn't, and it's not included on the list because of the community feedback, the city feedback, the previous commission direction that we've received. So this is all part of an ongoing conversation. We start with a very wide net of projects. We want to present it to the commission so you can get a feeling for what the technical results are, and then we refine that as we go forward. I can almost guarantee that for a lot of different reasons, every project you see here on the screen is not likely to show up as a fully funded project within our finally adopted CIP for a lot of different variables that we will continue to review and discuss with the commission. So this is kind of the starting point of that discussion, and we seek your feedback as we go through this if there's any specific segments that you have concerns on.
I think that's really helpful because I mean, I like the visual of this map so that we can see where, to your point, the model is demonstrating that there is need holistically throughout the system. But I think, as each of us look at our own districts, incorporating into the bigger picture, I think there are I'm curious as we continue to discuss this deeper, I already have some really big questions about this and kind of how to work through that, and specifically in my district.
Yeah, and we're glad to have those conversations about specific segments, whether it's today or this is just a presentation, you need some time to, process some of this information, and we'll have opportunities to do that and set up individual meetings with commissioners if necessary to walk through it. I will say, what you're looking at, remember, this is a future long-term 20-year projection. This isn't, we're going to go build all these projects right now. It's just within the 20 years and all of the growth that is anticipated, these are the projects that essentially show up based on all that analysis.
Madam President, one quick follow-up, if that's okay. Last one. And I'm sure you're probably going to get to this, Mark, but do we have a cost estimate to this already? Or is that that's a 2 conversation down the road?
Madam President, I'll answer it oh, we're going to get there.
Okay, good.
And,
Okay. Because I
and
think,
that's where it starts to get really, really interesting when we
Yeah.
start talking about how this ultimately all comes together into a formula where we calculate a fee. And the cost estimate is a big variable, probably the largest variable in that formula. So we're going to absolutely talk more about that. I would also just add that, this is all based on the best information we have at the time, the best data available. And we also, as you know, on an annual basis through the 5-year plan, we review every project. Just because it says one thing in our CIP, when we go out and actually start the design, we may choose based on commission direction to do something different. And that's totally allowable through the process.
Commissioner Nielsen.
Yeah, this is more for maybe Commissioner Pickering. How I look at this as well is part of it is that's kind of why we update these annually and every 5 years. But the other indicators, I've talked to the director and Justin, one data point, and I really like the maps, Mark, but what I like to look at is how far along the forecast are these individual TACs? Are they already at the 2050 forecast? Are they at a certain 90%? Some of them are over 100%. So where's the current stress in the for people who are here today? And then once, I guess, the next work session, when we see the how much of the project is impact fee eligible, that'll tell you is this investment helping people who are here today or a nice balance. That's going to be the struggle. So anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Back to you, Mark.
Yeah.
Hey. Well, great. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
keep moving on here, and we'll open up the floor again at the end for additional conversation. So this slide shows the intersection projects. Previous slide was roadway. This one is really just focused on intersection. So the intersection projects that were identified as part of this analysis process. The purple dots indicate traffic signals, while green dots indicate roundabouts. Some of these projects call for brand new traffic signals or roundabouts, and some of these projects really just call for minor modifications to existing roundabouts or traffic signals. An example of one of those modifications would be the addition of a dedicated left turn lane at an existing traffic signal. So not all of these are full, brand new traffic signals or brand new roundabouts. In total, we have identified 122 intersection projects, and this is an increase of 26 projects from the previous CIP, or about a 27% increase.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Mark, let me just ask you a question, because I get this question from residents a lot, asking about roundabouts. And I tell them, we're going to build a lot more. We've got a lot more in the pipeline. And I'm just curious to know, and maybe Justin's the one to answer this. I think at the moment we have something like 8 roundabouts in Ada County, or is it more than that? More than that? Okay. And I'm interested to know how many are currently in the pipeline in addition to how many are here. So Mark, you can probably tell me, how many roundabout projects do we have on this? We have 122 total, without counting. I suppose we could count them, but it looks like about half and half. Is that about right? We're probably looking at about 50 or so roundabout projects on this.
Yeah, President Gold, Commissioner McKinney, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I would guess about a 50-50 split.
Okay. All right, and I'll ask Justin later what our current numbers are, because I'm interested to know that, and people ask about that. I'm a big fan of roundabouts because it's a low-tech solution. It doesn't work everywhere, but where it does work, it's a great thing to have. So I'm absolutely in favor of those. Thanks.
Yeah, and President Gold, Commissioner McKinney, one thing to note is that when we identified the control type for each of these in the future, oftentimes from a capacity standpoint, a signal or a roundabout would function. So kind of getting back to the capacity needs and tying that to the impact fee requirements. So we really relied on staff input because they really have a full picture of land use context on each corridor, existing safety considerations, and that all of those factors went into determining whether a signal or a roundabout would be identified for each of these locations. And there were a lot of refinements from the previous CIP as well, just based on latest information. Yeah.
President Gold and Commissioner McKinney, I just wanted to add regarding the roundabout question and with respect to the map that you're seeing today. For the most part, a lot of these projects that we identify as roundabouts are for planning purposes, with the intent of right-of-way preservation, and also to be able to consider them in the future. While many of them, obviously, I think staff and the commission have looked at them from a corridor perspective to propose them as roundabouts, like for example, 10 Mile. In most situations, we want to make sure that we're able to have enough right-of-way for us to be, as these projects move forward, we're able to evaluate if that's the right treatment for your location. So even though you might see a roundabout at some of this intersection, in the future, we're able to evaluate further to ensure that that's the right treatment. If not, we would look at other treatments like the signalized intersection. Similar situation happened with Lake Hazel. Lake Hazel, 5 Mile, and Cloverdale were roundabouts in the past, and currently and now they're being designed as a signal. So those are just examples though of how this planning level changes over time into the future.
Commissioner Nielsen?
Because we're growing, do we have any grade separated intersections in the? I don't even know how we'd identify those, but I just thought I'd ask, since there's a lot of signals on the state highway system that, maybe they should be grade separated, thinking long-term, but.
Yeah, President Gold, Commissioner Nielsen, we did not go to that level of assuming grade separation. Generally, when we were developing our project recommendations, we kept it within the realm of what ACHD typically implements at arterial to arterial intersections. So no triple left turns, no right turn slip lanes. So we generally avoided those, and also alternative intersections. Not to say that it couldn't happen in the future, but for the purpose of this planning, that's what we assumed.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay. So moving forward, this slide shows a comparison between the updated project list and the currently adopted CIP. And there's a lot going on this figure. I believe it's also included in your packet, so I'll take a minute to walk through what we're looking at. So on the roadway project side, the orange lines represent new roadway projects that were identified through this 2025 CIP process and are not included in the currently adopted CIP. And you'll notice that these are largely centered in Cuna, South Meridian, Star and Eagle, and then a couple within the city of Boise. The blue lines represent roadways that were in the previous CIP, but now have updated widening assumptions. And I'll walk through a couple examples to illustrate why we're seeing some of these changes. So some of these changes are due to different anticipated future traffic patterns. And I'll use Black Cat from Franklin to Chinden as an example for how that changed. So the currently adopted CIP shows projects on Black Cat from Franklin to Chinden that widen to 5 lanes and are fully impact fee eligible. That traffic analysis and modeling completed in 2020 did not assume full build out of State Highway 16 in future years. In this CIP update, we did assume full build out of a grade separated State Highway 16 by year 2045. And with that parallel capacity improvement to Black Cat included in our future scenarios, we are seeing less future demand on the Black Cat Road corridor, and only show the need to widen to 3 lanes by 2045 to meet ACHD planning thresholds. That's not to say that the ultimate project at that location would necessarily be 3 lanes. It could still be 5 lanes, but only widening to 3 lanes would be impact fee eligible. And these are some of the intricacies that we'll be screening with staff over the next couple months as we refine this project list. Another factor that has impacted our project recommendations from the currently adopted CIP are modifications to the master street map since 2020. As an example, the currently adopted CIP has a project to widen Beacon Light Road from State Highway 16 to Linder Road to 3 lanes. When that CIP was developed in 2020, the master street map identified that segment as constrained to 3 lanes. Since 2020, at a request from the city of Eagle, ACHD changed the planned or maximum number of lanes on that segment to 5 lanes. As we went through this updated project identification process, the traffic data showed that 5 lanes would be needed to meet ACHD's planning thresholds. So this project now shows widening to 5 lanes instead of 3 lanes. So just wanted to call that out as another factor that affected some of these changes from the previous CIP to this update. On the intersection side, the yellow highlight indicates new intersection projects that were not included in the currently adopted CIP. Similar to roadways, there are a lot of new projects in North Meridian, Star, and Cuna, and also quite a few throughout the city of Boise. Intersections that are not highlighted were in the previous CIP or the currently adopted CIP, but assume a different control type. And this goes back to our previous conversation of determining signals versus roundabouts. So as an example, the Lake Hazel and 10-mile intersection currently in the currently adopted CIP has a project for a new traffic signal. And this updated CIP now calls for a roundabout at this location. And again, that was determined through working with staff to determine what control type would be most appropriate due to capacity, safety, and other land use context considerations.
Madam President,
Yeah, Commissioner Pickering.
quick question, Mark. I noticed that there's only 2 amended signal projects versus a lot of new signal projects. Could you explain what an amended signal project would be?
Yeah, President Gold, Commissioner Pickering, all that means is that in the previous CIP, it was a traffic signal, and now it's a roundabout in this updated CIP, if that makes sense. So the currently adopted CIP has a project at that location for a traffic signal, and through conversations with staff and all these other considerations, we've determined that it's more appropriate to assume a roundabout at this point in time.
Oh, I was asking about the amended signal project. That would still apply even though
Yeah,
it's
so just
different?
the swap.
Oh,
So
the
it was
slope, okay.
a roundabout in the past, and now it's a traffic signal.
That's what I thought. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, good question. Probably could have phrased that a little more intuitively. Okay. One more item I'd like to highlight is existing deficiencies. Existing deficiencies are defined as locations that do not meet ACHD's planning thresholds under year 2025 conditions. The Idaho Impact Fee Act specifies that impact fees may not fund projects that are existing deficiencies and that CIPs need to identify these locations. The projects identified on this map highlight these locations, and portions of these projects will not be eligible for funding via impact fees. And this includes the 26 roadway segments and 6 intersections shown on this map. Just wanted to highlight this component of our process as it is an important part of confirming that ACHD is meeting Idaho code, and it will affect our impact fee calculations. So one more slide for you today. Really, the key next step in our process is developing cost estimates for each project, assessing impact fee eligibility for each project, and then using that to calculate the total impact fee eligible costs of all projects. And really, that total impact fee eligible cost number will be used directly in our impact fee calculations, as Justin alluded to. As a reminder to the commission, and as you discussed, the CIP project costs have not been updated since 2020, over 5 years ago. And as you are all well aware, there have been significant increases in construction costs over that time period, and this will affect the resulting traffic impact fees. We will come back to the commission in June, and our plan is to focus our conversation on the project cost estimates and resulting traffic impact fees, as well as further refinements to this project list. We will also revisit scenarios on service areas, so aiming to tie up some of the loose ends from our conversations on best practices. In addition to this touch point with you in June, we plan to have an additional 2 to 3 work sessions with the commission between now and adoption to work through these final items and get this project to the finish line. Ultimately, our goal is to have the CIP and TIF schedule adopted by the commission by November 2025. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Commissioner Pickering.
Madam
Yeah,
President.
Thanks, Madam President. Mark, on the public input, could you put the timeline back on there really quick? Thank you. The public comment period, how long are you anticipating that to be again?
Yep, President Gold, Commissioner Pickering, I believe we have 30 days. And it should start, I believe, in late September, going through most of October.
Okay, I think because this is such a big update, and I know that we've been really good about being intentional and taking our time, but I think the downside of that is I think some of our land use partners kind of fall asleep to the fact that this is happening. And so I just want to flag to staff to make sure that we, give them a heads up that this public comment period's coming. Are you guys going to be presenting to the cities? Kind of how do we make the most of that public comment period so that the richness of that feedback is well captured?
President Gold, Commissioner Pickering, thank you for your question. So through the process of the entire process of the CIP and through the CICAC committee has as we develop and continue to work with them in the development, we encourage them to also to work with the cities as they are representative of each of individual city as dictated by our bylaws of the current CICAC. We are also engaging with each of the cities through coordination meetings that we're developing between now up to adoption. So just as an example, we're already engaging with the city of Boise, having communication, ensuring that they're also tracking the information we're presenting to the commission through the CICAC, and they're informed, and that's how we're interacting as of right now with each of individual city at this moment. We're planning to continue engagement with the rest of the cities, as the city of Meridian, Eagle, and so on and so forth, and as we move forward through the process.
Madam President, follow up. So, and so I think that's helpful, but I think oftentimes the folks that are appointed to the CICAC, they might have one relationship or connection with one person within those cities, but it might not be the person that needs to weigh in on that. So I think it's really helpful to have create more opportunities for additional input and clarification. So, if there's, I would encourage us to do maybe a work session if we can get on their calendars and be a little bit more public about that. Cause I think we don't know. And I know that our advisory committee members, they devote so much time and energy to this work, but it's still very complicated. And I think we need to kind of air out just what this plan is, cause that also behooves us. So I think keep on doing that, but I think we just need to do a little bit more.
Commissioner McKinney?
I believe I figured out the answer to my question, so thank you.
Commissioner Nielsen?
This might be a question for Edinson or the planning team. You have to kind of maybe piggyback from Commissioner Pickering. Though it's not in my district, I know the change to beacon light, it seems to be significant. And in the City of Eagles priorities for the 5-year plan, they've asked apparently for many years to do a quarter plan. And that's where I think looking at a widening and the land use comes together. But I'm not sure how would our land use partners get that done, I guess, especially for some of the CIP projects where you really need to, it would help the eventual design of a widening to really understand the land use context. Yeah. So, or Christy, sorry. Sorry, I
Pick a
changed
number,
topic
pick a
there,
number,
kind
right?
of, it's kind of a hybrid question, yeah.
Thank you. President Gold, Commissioner Nielsen. We work directly with our partners. Typically, we don't do a study on a road until we get closer to actually getting into design, because we want to make sure that shelf life of a study like that is more appropriate for the timing of when we're actually going to do it. The City of Eagle, they have their own 5-year and their own funding, and they are actually going to fund a corridor review of Beacon Light themselves, and we'll be a partner on those teams for that. So that is something that is also working through the process. So kind of,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
We do work with them on all of that. I hope
Yeah.
that helps.
Okay, the self-funded plan, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Oh,
Commissioner Nielsen?
just maybe a request, because the printed maps are so helpful. If I could get the existing deficiencies map, the same, thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
send to the whole commission. That'd be great. Yes, thanks, Madam President. Again, I just want to reemphasize, I'm thinking of you, Shandy, and you guys made an adjustment to the 5-year work plan in terms of the name. I think the name of this also presents barriers to getting input too. Not that I'm saying you should rename this, but I'm kind of thinking again, how do we shed some light on this big update for public's input, the city's input? And I just would like to nudge, the team to maybe just think other more creative ways, especially given, to your point, Mike Run, Highway 16, right? There is just so much that is on the table and on the docket for the next 5, 20, 50 years. And so I think it'll be really important for us to just do more than we've done in the past in terms of public input, awareness, education about what this means and what it doesn't mean. Because I think there's oftentimes what I've even noticed within other elected officials, they assume that what's in this is happening and they assume, oh, this is the price tag. You know what I mean? So I think like there's just a lot of education that needs to come from, and we can maximize this moment, right, to educate folks about what this is and what it isn't, so that we actually have a well-informed plan.
Yeah, I agree with the, the idea of doing kind of a deep dive with cities, like getting on their agenda and doing that as an item. I think that would be really helpful in making sure that we're all on the same page and informed and understand the process and moving forward. I also appreciate the maps, and so would love to see that final map sent out. And then this is obviously a lot of information, so I think I'll be scheduling a one-on-one with you all to talk through the details of this, and appreciate that this is another step in the process and everybody's work on this as well.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
Thank you, President Gold. Thank you, commissioners.
All right, with that, we are done for the week. Again, we don't have a meeting next week, so we'll see you all back in June.